Nothing to be learned there. It just directs the refrigerant that comes off of the compressor either to the evaporator or the condenser. That just changes those roles, and that's done by the reversing valve. Very, very simple technology. It's been around a long, long time. Heating cycle, now you can see that the condenser, which is now the hot side, where you're removing so much heat from the hot gas that it condenses into a liquid, that's where it gets its name. In the evaporator, which is where I tell everybody that's the magic in this system, because that's where it's picking up the free energy. All you have is a cold liquid in there. Warm thermal energy from the ground by circulating fluid comes in, evaporates that liquid, and you can see the water the vapor coming over there to the reversing valve, making a sharp turn, going down in the compressor, being reheated, and the cycle continues, and that just goes on and on and on. Don't know how long that thing's going to last. Now, in some locations, in residences, a lot of times we use antifreeze solutions. In a lot of commercial buildings, they're not needed, especially down south. Even commercial buildings in like schools in Canada, we have a lot of schools that, because of the internal gains by the equipment, computers and children and lights and things like that, antifreeze solutions are not required or not used. If you have to use an antifreeze solution, the highlighted text up there says it must be safe to use. We have got to have whatever we have in this system to be safe. The other things in there are important, but the one that has to be made, it has to be safe to be used. Now, some of the antifreeze solutions that have been used are flammable, so you have to make sure that you don't carry something into a residence that's flammable. You don't want to burn somebody's home down. You don't want to have anything that should happen to be spilled and cause a problem for pets and things like that. So you want to have something that is safe. That's just an absolute requirement. Non-toxic, non-corrosive. Now, you know, these heat pump systems are, the ground heat exchanger probably will handle about any antifreeze solution that you have. So that big investment that you have out there in the ground, you know, it's not that big. That thing that's making you money that's out there in the ground, let me put it that way, high density polyethylene pipe. It'll handle almost any antifreeze that you can think of and handle it with ease. So what you have to look at are the metal components inside the heat pump, the valves and other things like that that you've attached between the heat pump and the ground heat exchanger. You have a circulating pump, you've got some shut-off valves in there and things like that. So you want to make sure that those components are appropriate for the antifreeze that you're going to use. We always like good heat transfer characteristics. The other thing that we don't want to do is we don't want to put too much antifreeze in there, because if we do, we can get the solution thick. It doesn't transfer heat as well, and so you lose performance in the heat pump because you got anxious and you thought if a little bit was good, a whole lot's better. That's not the case. We'll talk about antifreeze solutions and concentrations that we use at a later time. Everybody wants everything to be low cost. Sometimes that's a trap. You can find things that are low cost, but they're a little bit toxic. You want it to have a long life. Most antifreezes that we use and that you're familiar with run at very low temperatures, because ground heat exchangers in the summertime may get up to body temperature, 98, 100 degrees Fahrenheit. That's not very hot. Generally, that's not enough temperature rise in an antifreeze solution to cause a breakdown. Most of us, when we think of changing antifreeze, we're thinking about changing antifreeze in our automobile, where we may be running up 220, 230 degrees Fahrenheit, considerably hotter than this. But we're mild. In other words, I tell everybody, man, we're almost up to body temperature. So in the other temperature down, we're almost down where we make our ice, and we certainly are not afraid of those kind of temperatures. Now, a lot of data has been gathered about relative antifreeze costs. If I were going to get into this business, and if you're not getting into this business, you're missing an opportunity of your lifetime. But you need to check with the heat pump manufacturer. What do they recommend? Okay, there's the recommendation of the heat pump manufacturer, what they like. They probably have a product that they'd like to sell you. The other thing that you can't ignore is local codes and state requirements. You just can't put anything you want to underground. I mean, you can, but you better not get caught, and you don't want to screw up the groundwater anyhow. This is especially important in vertical systems. In horizontal systems, it's not nearly as tougher requirement because of the inability for that to get into the groundwater very easily. But you better check on local codes. In some places, they define a well as anything that has a depth equal to its diameter. So if you got a 1 foot borehole, 1 foot down is a vertical borehole. So you got to really be careful. And this shows the relative costs of some antifreeze solutions in terms of Canadian dollars. And they say, so you could look at the different ones. You see calcium chloride, which is a salt, methanol and alcohol, ethylene glycol, methanol. Some of them you may not be familiar with. Potassium acetate. That was a solution that we used for a while. It had a lot of promise, and it's what I call a fallback solution if people come out and they get concerned about some of these other solutions underground. It is almost non-toxic, and it has good heat transfer characteristics. It is a little bit expensive, but it has one characteristic: it has a low surface tension. It likes to leak. I mean, it'll leak through porous bronze flanges, and then turns your bronze to a nice, beautiful aqua color on the outside. And it may be pretty on clothes, but it's not very pretty dripping on your equipment room floor. And then propylene glycol, that's a very common solution for ground heat exchangers. Because it is considered to be, in a lot of cases, it is a food grade material. It's put in things like ice cream bars and other things like that. It keeps the ice cream from becoming crystalline, nice smooth texture. A little bit of it's good, a whole lot of it to you is not so good. It's like drinking whiskey. A sip of it, I guess, is okay. A whole bottle of it it'll kill you. So propylene glycol is the same way in food. A little bit of it really enhances the texture. And so if you look at a lot of things that you're eating, there's you'll find some of these things. And then sodium chloride, table salt. You can't beat the price, but there are a few things that you put the salt solution together with oxygen, and man, it'll take after some copper, and it'll just kind of make a mess in your system. So before you launch off on these things, go to the literature, and I'm suggesting you go to the IGSHPA website, because we have a lot of places there where a lot of good research work is done. And some work done in New Mexico by New Mexico Research Institute on comparing antifreeze solutions, toxicity, and things like that. But it's a very good program you want to take a look at. Now, there in your installation guide, there are antifreeze comparisons. You can read about all of this. You can study this. You can bone up on this thing. You can become expert in this thing if you want to be. But the most important thing is that you want to take a look out there, and before you jump on this thing here, is check with your heat pump manufacturer. See what they're recommending. Don't go down and buy some automobile antifreeze and pour in one of these things, because automobile antifreeze has some heavy metals in there that they use for corrosion control in automobile engines. Okay? If they caution you all the time not to let your pet drink these things, why would you want to take the chance of letting this thing get into your groundwater? So don't do things like that. Be wise. Look at state and local codes, and then go to the antifreeze manufacturers and get their literature. Make sure that you get a reputable manufacturer, somebody that's been in this thing a long time, and then lastly, or maybe even first, go to the IGSHPA installation standards and find out what kind of information is available on antifreeze solutions. Nobody wants to recommend any kind of solution, because nobody wants the liability. But eventually, if you need the antifreeze solution, you're going to have to ask somebody.